Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Cam Webster, and welcome to The Art of Boring, the podcast where we dive deeper into Moore's investment philosophy and thinking in order to help you, our listeners, become more informed investors. Ultimately, we hope to connect you with the people at Moore who find excitement in delivering on Be Boring, Make Money. In light of our president, Michael Mezei's upcoming retirement, we thought we'd have him on the podcast to reflect on lessons learned in the leadership of an investment firm. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Information relating to investment approaches or individual investments should not be construed as advice or endorsement. Any views expressed in this podcast are based upon the information available at the time and are subject to change.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Today we're talking with Michael Mezei, who's the president of Moore Investment Management. So, Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Cam.
This is your first appearance.
It is.
You're a rookie.
Have to get it in before it's too late.
This is true. You're retiring. So timely to have you on and share some of your experience as the president of the firm. Before we get there, why don't you tell us kind of your journey and how you actually arrived at Moore, and then we'll dig in on some lessons learned.
Sure. I guess that's one of the things that I'm learning. You learn as you go still, even though I'm towards the end of my career here at Moore. And in fact, my career is you do get to reflect, and people ask you to share perspectives on leadership and on your journey. So I've had a chance to do that, both the people leaders here at the firm as well as a group of investment executives in Chicago not too long ago. So I've put some thought to it. But maybe just as backdrop, like how did I get here to be president of Moore Investment Management? It wasn't a straight line journey. Out of school, I was a corporate lawyer in downtown Toronto for about 6-7 years. And then went from there, and that was my first entry into the investment world, became general counsel for Franklin Templeton, sort of combine the legal and get into the investment world, and was there for 9 years, and through that time had opportunity to have a number of different roles there and continue to grow sort of my breadth within the management part of the investment management world. Then moved to Alberta as a personal decision our wife and I made to move our kids at the time, 8 and 9, in 2002, and had the chance there to help start what's now known as ATB Wealth for ATB Financial, and got to know the folks at Moore, which led to 10 years ago being asked to join Moore as president.
So interesting journey in that, maybe a little bit unusual. I mean, you're a lawyer by background, but you end up as president of an investment firm. Typically, probably the CIO ends up as double hatting it. So maybe you'll get into that in terms of lessons learned. But why don't we start there with that?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I think generally what I observe in the investment world is that there are two types of sort of leaders of the management part of the business or the firm. There are many firms, as you alluded to, where it is somebody from the investment team, often the chief investment officer, that says they want to also or step away from investing and focus on firm management. The other model is people like me who come from a variety of backgrounds, and in my case, legal. Often it's finance, it could be marketing, could be a number of things, and move into the leadership role. So given my background, obviously that has focused a lot of where I put most of my attention. It's more around our operations, coordinating things across the firm, obviously working closely with our board on strategy and executing that strategy. But most importantly, and this is a lesson of leadership, definitely, is you learn what your strengths are and where you can add a lot of value. And in figuring out a good investment process or company to pick or portfolio to pick, that's not one of them. So where I do hope I can play a role at Moore is to just make sure, and we'll get into these things in more depth, I hope, making sure that the stage is set, that we have a great environment that people want to come into, do their best work, both as individuals and, very importantly, collaboratively to contribute. So on the investing side, it's more an indirect contribution.
I want to get you just to reflect quickly on going from ATB to Moore. Before we get into those, I guess, specific lessons of leadership, I'm really curious to know your decision process. Or like, you were at ATB, then you a decade ago you joined Moore. So what were the circumstances around that? What made you decide that Moore was the place to be?
What really excited me about Moore is I'd got to know Moore, not just the reputation, but a number of people. And what I knew is just the quality of the people, the great reputation that the firm had, both for investing and part of the community and caring about clients, And what I learned through the interview process was that where I could help would be just bringing some of the management background and focus to sort of saw it really as additive. So to me, it was a real dream opportunity to my new hometown of Calgary to have the opportunity to lead the management of a great investment firm, of something that obviously I leaped at, and here I am 10 years later.
Yeah, great. So thanks for that. I think that provides some good context for everybody. You've announced that you're retiring. So obviously, as you said in the intro, a little chance to be contemplative. So let's be contemplative. What have you learned, Michael?
What have I learned? Well, there's a lot, but one thing that I really learned a lot and appreciated more is culture. So culture had been something that I had certainly been aware of and part of and thought that's a good thing and my leadership experiences beforehand. But I heard through the interview process and meeting so many people just how central it is to more. And I didn't really get it until I got here. And so what I learned very quickly is that my main role, is helping foster and grow a great culture. And what I'd learned, I guess, over my career, and this took a while, is to get to the place where for a while it was almost like you had to apologize for caring about things like culture. Like this was in the more traditional, sort of hard-nosed business environment that I grew up in. What was paramount, what was considered really the difficult stuff is sort of the measured what gets done attitude, and it's all about the bottom line. And things like, culture is more of a soft HR type of thing. What I've learned over time, and especially at Moore, and starting with the arriving 10 years ago and over 10 years, is just how foundational and how central it is to everything we do. So it is not just a soft HR thing. It is an extremely important thing, and it is hard to do well. And it's especially hard in the context of a very rapidly growing firm. So that's been one of the main sort of themes of the focus of my efforts in leading the management of the firm over the last 10 years is helping us grow in terms of our clients, in terms of geographic breadth, in terms of our AUM, obviously, while maintaining that very strong culture and going from one office to 3 offices, from 55 to over 150 people.
Okay, so message is loud and clear on culture. That gets a lot, maybe it gets more airplay now. I think there's more firms globally that, not just in the investment industry, but globally. I mean, you think about Google and they talk about the culture. There's some kind of legendary interview process to get a job at Google that you have to solve a puzzle, or I don't know. But the point is, there's maybe a lot of lip service paid to culture. So what I want to ask you, Michael, was there any single cultural moment in your 10 years that maybe early on that it really crystallized for you is that this is the thing to focus on, or one of the most important things to think?
The importance of culture became so clear to me during that very first summer when I joined Moore. So during that summer, I met with each one of the 55 people who were employees of the firm at the time. And I would ask people about many things, about their thoughts on the firm and what our real strengths are and where we could go. And one of the questions I asked, especially our ownership group and people on our board, is sort of, what is your vision for the future? And because I'd been schooled in this way of, what gets measured gets done and targets, what I thought I would get are all CFAs. I'd get a whole bunch of numbers.
Absolutely.
And then I could work with finance and we can put this. So some people may give me AUM targets, right, or return on equity targets, or whatever it may be. I could take all these numbers, and then I knew as president what my job would be.
So you're expecting a set of benchmarks
exactly
that you could measure the firm by.
Yeah. And then, I know how to figure that out. Okay, this is what we need to do as a firm, and sort of numbers, and back that up into sales teams. And I learned that I didn't get any of that. So I didn't get one number. What I got more was people just talking about the environment that they work in, the people they work in, having the ability to come in and do the type of work they love and collaborate with others, whether it be people on our investing team or people in client-facing roles or operating roles. And so that really was a light bulb moment for me, and say, okay, it's not just about the numbers. I mean, sure, in the end, we are a business and we do need to produce numbers, performance numbers that our clients care about. But both in investing and with the firm, we realize that it's really what we do and the inputs that matter. And if we focus on those, doing the best jobs we can, whether it be investing or managing the firm, the results will take care of themselves. And what I call that is sort of a professional mentality. Like other leading professionals, you hope when a doctor goes in to perform some sort of procedure that he or she aren't thinking about how much I'm going to get paid for that procedure. They are thinking about how can I do the absolute best for my patient, and sure, if I keep doing that well, I'm going to earn a good living, and take that kind of perspective to business. So I felt very much at home, more being in a place that sort of thinks along those lines.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you went in expecting to get a language in numbers. And what you got out was more a language of culture, if you right to paraphrase and go back to maybe the help we've gotten from Jim Ware over the years. So Jim Ware from Focus Consulting. It sounds like that was in tandem, that was your discovery.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. And part of the culture is we don't have all the answers. So that, yes, we know culture is important to us, but there are others out there who are experts at it. Jim Ware and his colleagues have made their living around understanding cultures and how that ties into building great investment teams. So we reach out to him to talk about what are some of their learnings and some of the language that goes along with that sort of has incorporated into sort of regular more language, things like staying above the line, constructive problem solving as opposed to below the line, like getting very negative or defensive, holding your opinions lightly so people feel very free to share them and knock them around and don't feel they're going to be like beaten over the head because their opinion is in a minority or way out there. And then measuring it too. So going back to sort of the hard stuff, there is a way to measure culture. So at Focus, they do an industry-wide survey that tries to take something as, soft and amorphous and so on as culture and actually measure how our firm's doing against other firms in the industry. And as we've done that over time, it also gives us some benchmarking in our culture and reinforces things that are going well for us, but also helps open our eyes for areas where we can improve.
Okay, so I think we covered culture pretty well there. Culture, Michael, might be really dependent on people. And I know my interview process was probably, I'm just thinking about my own experience, was probably the most rigorous I've been through in a 20-year career. Let's just talk a little bit about people.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Cam, that it was a very rigorous process. And that is by design. So the rigor that we take, and I was saying I met with all 9 board members when I joined the firm, and that is the focus, is to make sure we spend the time, we get a lot of opinions on people to come in, because what we're trying to do here is hard, and we need to have very, very strong, good people who are culturally aligned and bring some good mix of skills and experiences to us. So we take a lot of time getting people in, but then I think what happens from there, and maybe this is a learning over my career, is the focus is we talk very much about having people focus their time on their genius areas. So the areas that they are the best at, and try to then take them and make them even better at those, as opposed to fixing weaknesses. And that sort of in the earlier part of my career, which you see a lot of, is that a lot of performance assessments are focused on weaknesses and how can we fix those. Instead, a mentality, I don't think we're alone in this. I think this has been a general trend out there, is that let's figure out what people are good at. They like to do that and they're better at it. Let's go to town on that stuff. So then figure out what people are really good at, have them spend most of their time, help them grow. So spend time coaching. And one of the learnings about coaching, and again, this is a journey, and we're not alone as a firm in this journey, is, coaching and mentoring and leading people was more about the inputs. It was assessment. You're doing this well. You're not doing that well. This is what you need to do to get to the next level. And now, it's much more about listening. People know themselves the best. They can assess where they're at. People typically are pretty aware of what they're good at and what's not at. Sometimes not as fully aware on things that others might not see, but help them with that, help open their eyes, and then ask questions, because people want to generally, get to a better level and ask and work collaboratively and figure that out. So I think that, again, is very suits sort of my personality and many of the leaders at Moore to sort of take that approach in building people.
So my quick thought there is that it sounds like it'd be quite challenging. I mean, I'm an institutional portfolio manager, so I day-to-day describe our investment process and philosophy. So it's easy to understand it from that unit of the business. But I'm interested if you can provide an insight on how do you implement that across all areas of the firm.
What we make sure is that although people's roles or focus are different in different areas of the firm, that some of these foundational sort of principles, so our values, some of the cultural elements, that they are broadly shared. So something like excellence. That excellence might look very different in somebody who is in our compliance area and trying to manage risk from somebody who's in our finance area to someone who faces clients who's investing. But a shared mentality that we are all aiming to be at that level in everything we do, and that we're going to do that collaboratively. So you can do that in different ways, but you're not pretending you're going to have all the answers. Some things might be better at someone might be better at different aspects. So some of those sort of shared values and behaviors is what we focus on, and then it just plays out differently in different areas of the firm.
We've heard about culture, we've heard about people, and we've heard about within the people focusing on your area of genius. So what are you really good at? But how do you make decisions in that environment? I picture all these people out running away and doing whatever they want under an umbrella of excellence. It could work, but how do you make a decision in that?
Yeah, you've touched on a very important thing, because that, I think, if the root of your question is like, why do we come together as a firm? We're all individuals, and so hopefully, yes, we are bringing in very high quality people and having them focus on their area of genius. But how do you make it all work? How does the sum become much, much greater?
Yes, what's the secret sauce, Michael? Come on.
How does the whole become much greater than the sum of the parts? And in a word, it's collaboration, and that sort of ties into culture. So how do people collaborate well? So there's a number of elements to that. Part of through the recruiting process, there are people who prefer and work well in an environment where they mostly do their own thing, whether it's how they invest or that doesn't work here. You need to buy into some basic tenets around our values, our culture, how we invest. So that's a big part of it. So people who come in knowing that teamwork is one of our values. So we talked about bringing in very high quality people who fit our culture, having them focus on the genius areas. But then the next big question is, well, how do you get these people then to work together very well in a collaborative way? Because that gets at the heart of really who we are as a firm. How can we be much stronger as a firm working collectively than any one of us or any one team can on their own? And so part of that is, as we build teams and figure out how to have a very effective, high-performing teams, is get a really broad range of perspectives, types of personalities who share the foundation. You don't want that to be different, so that everybody's really aligned against our values, aiming high, focus on clients, teamwork, long-term perspective. But how they come at it is very different. So what makes, I think, good decision-making, whether it be investments or certainly in firm management, where I spend most of my time, is having people who bring one person maybe just naturally, they're more the skeptic. They're more likely to point out all the things that will go wrong and why we shouldn't do this. But then if there's somebody else at the table and they're just more naturally the optimist and how we can succeed despite the challenges, and they have energy behind that. And if you put all of that together, either at an extreme is not good. Risk, you don't get anything done. If you just focus on risk, you don't do anything. If you just focused on, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, you're going to have some problems you're going to run into. So the best decision making is putting it all on the table. People who think more about facts, some are more sort of factually oriented. What are all the facts? Others say, well, how are people going to feel about this? What are clients going to think? What are employees going to think? So bring that sort of more emotional component to it. So bring in all these things, and then you're much more able to make good decisions.
So, Michael, we started with your journey and how you got here, and you walked us through some of your lessons learned along the way, but you were hired as the leader of the firm. So maybe we can kind of round out the discussion on lessons in leadership. So what have you learned in that aspect?
If you don't mind me rephrasing it,
yeah. I'm just the host.
You're okay.
You're the guest, man. Go.
I never looked at myself as the leader of the firm. I looked at myself as one of the many leaders of the firm. What I do lead is the management of the firm. So that's the aspect that I I lead. But we have so many leaders at the firm, leaders of our investment teams and client-facing teams. So I focus on the overall all management. But in doing that, I guess my biggest lesson in leadership beyond more through my career is just there's no right or wrong. Well, there are wrongs, but there's probably no right profile of what leadership looks like. But whatever it is, it has to be authentic to that person. And so it needs to be that someone's able to bring who they really are and in an environment where it works. So for me, I think those that know me, and maybe this podcast will confirm it, I'm not a rah, dynamic Obama-type speaker that's going to say, look, this is where we're all going, come follow me.
He just had really good speechwriters and knew how to read script. Come on.
Maybe. I'm much more about, trying to harness the energy that's here and make sure that people are working well together and staying positive and collaborative and looking at things holistically. That's more what I'm about. And that fits sort of me as a leader, and it fits more. So I think that's, for me, what's really made leadership work for me. And that may be totally different to many other people who are effective leaders in totally different environments. But the key is whatever it is just right for you and you're the right place that can happen.
I like the way you positioned it. You're not the leader of the firm. You're one of the leaders. And that's maybe speaks to more the authenticity of how you approach it than anything else. Part of the reason we're having this podcast is you recently presented to other investment firm executives on the invitation of Jim Ware, and I think you authored a foreword. So within that, I guess you've been asked as an expert in leading investment teams. What would you say are keys to success for an investment firm?
I think what I've learned or observed over certain 10 years or more, or 25 years of being in the investment world is, there's no set answer or recipe for being great investors or being a great investment firm. But there are certainly a bunch of things that you can do to set the odds in your favor. So one of them is that you do have a really clear process. And people know what it is and they follow it, and it's a logical process. Secondly, that you have a great team working around it. So in a way that I see this question sort of bringing in elements of all the things we've talked about, that people who are investing is really hard. I don't know if there's any question about that. In any period, it's hard, but investing successfully over long periods of time in different asset classes, to do that consistently is really, really hard. So I think what I've learned is that the best to put the odds in your favor that you can actually do that very difficult thing for very long periods of time is you need a great process. You need great people. You need great culture then to bring the team together and work very collaboratively together. You need different types of mindsets. As I mentioned before, people who think about everything wrong and think about all the great opportunities in investment and put it all on the table and think about the world probabilistically. Check your ego at the door. You don't pretend to have a crystal ball on exactly how things are going to unfold. But what you can do think is, as a team, put all the possibilities on the table, have a good decision-making process so that there are clear ways to make decisions and move forward. So those are some of the aspects, and those are the things that we try to practice every day and get better at every day. And if you can do all those things, then your chances of success, both for clients and as a firm, will be the strongest they can be over the long term. And that's what I'm proud of being part of at Moore over the last 10 years.
Thanks, Michael. It's not quite the secret sauce, but maybe it is. Thanks for sharing that. So what we like to do, Michael, is close out the conversation with one more thought. And given your experience in the industry, your experience with the firm, I thought maybe this is an appropriate question. So if you were entering the business now, you just new freshly minted level 3 CFA, and you're in the industry now, what advice would you have now for somebody entering the industry?
I think the key, and one of the things I've learned over time, certainly through my journey, is that there's no answer. So I'm not going to give you like a specific answer, but where I would encourage people to spend time is really checking in with themselves a lot of what it is, like why they do what they do. What is it that gives them energy and positive energy? What is it that takes away energy or is a drain? What excites them? And there's no right answer for everybody, But it could be that for somebody, for example, they love spending time with people and they love helping people. So maybe if that's more of their mindset, maybe that's somebody who's more suited to an investment counselor or institutional portfolio manager role. Maybe somebody who's more focused in investing and very analytical and loves to assess business models and gets a lot of energy by building models. And I like to do that. They get energy from that. Whatever it is, it's just really checking in with yourself and I'm continuing to ask those questions. And this is probably broader. If I asked any young person in any career almost going into it, like, what do you look for? It's just trying to really stay attuned to that. What does I enjoy doing the most? What gives me the most energy? What gives me the most sense of purpose? And what takes away from that? And then just help those guide you through your career decisions.
I have one more thought now. You're off to retirement. So given what you just responded, I want you to respond to how are you looking at retirement? What do you plan to do? Have you thought about it?
Well, at this stage of my life, as I wind down my full-time career, I get a lot of energy from being outdoors. I mean, that's the short answer, whether it's on my bike or on skis or on a golf course. I just love being outdoors. So I will remain on our board next year. And that's where I hope to continue doing a lot of this, just sharing a lot of my perspectives, whether it be on leadership, whether it be on strategy, whether it be one-on-one with people who are in earlier stages of their career. If I can have something that can be additive to help them on their journey, that also gives me a lot of energy. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but that's at this stage of my career where I'm getting most of my energy.
Thanks for sharing that. And it sounds like there might be an outdoor board meeting sometime in the future. Thanks for joining us. This was great, Michael, and good luck in retirement.
Thank you, Cam.
Hey everyone, Cam here again. To subscribe to the Art of Boring podcast, go to more, that's mawer.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review on iTunes, which will help more people discover the Be Boring, Make Money philosophy. Again, thanks for listening.